Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. This is the Endless Song Podcast with Will and Emily. Yeah, so episode 2, we talked a lot about me last time. So I think the focus here is your experiences this time, which is less focused on awakenings and more focused on experiences over time.
Yeah. Decades.
Because, I mean, we're coming from a completely different angle when we're talking about you than when we're talking about what's been going on with me. Because, I mean, for me, it's been like 4 to 5 months. For you, it's been 4 to 5 decades.
Right.
So this one will feel a little different
Yeah.
than the last one did.
Yeah. This is a slow burn.
Yeah.
This is not fast track at all. This is slow burn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's important because when we talk about the differences between people's awakenings, between different experiences that people are having,
Completely
just like
different.
the timeline is different, the experiences themselves are different.
Yeah.
For the both of us.
Exactly. Yeah, they're all important. No matter big, small, subtle, amazing, whatever, mind-blowing. Yeah, they're all important because I think they all, as you start really looking at the pattern of your experiences over your journey, you begin seeing themes. And I didn't even realize until today, because I knew that we were going to be recording this, that I've had big things happen to me like every 10 years. That had never even dawned on me until I was kind of like, what exactly do I want to talk about?
Almost like a sustained schedule over years.
Yeah, exactly. And they were all lessons. They were all important lessons. Yeah, I think when you're in it, you're just looking at like, oh man, that was a cool experience. Mm-hmm. But I think now that I'm older, I'm able to look back from the time I was a kid and be like, wow, okay, these were all my learning experiences. It was building of my foundation for whatever it is that I'm going to start doing now, for the second half of my life.
Sure.
And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Do you feel, looking back now, if you hadn't had your near-death experience when you were 5, would things have played out the same? Do you think you would have had the same experiences, or do you feel like that first great experience was sort of a trigger to things that kept unlocking over time?
I don't know. I have no idea. That's a really good question. It's something that I've never thought about before. Because I believe that we all have these gifts or abilities, whatever you want to call them. And I think that they just turn on or open up for some people when they're born, and for others, when they're 70 or whenever they need them. Or for some people, I don't even know that they turn on at all. It depends on what we all came here for. We all have come here for certain lessons and, soul contracts and everything else. So, I mean, it's a complicated question. I have no idea. I'm grateful for my near-death experience because of the path that it set me on. And I don't know how much that influenced all my other experiences. I mean, it influenced them in the way that I, view the base of them, as far as all of them have the foundation of love as a theme.
Sure.
But I have a feeling that even if I hadn't had my near-death experience, things would have happened anyway, as I found out that other family members were, had experiences that I didn't know about until I was a teenager and young adult.
Okay.
So, yeah, so maybe things would have opened up anyways for me. I don't know.
And while we talking a little bit about that idea of choice and its role in these experiences, obviously it does seem like there is an aspect of this that is very much about opening yourself up to it when you have the chance, the experience, the awakening, and that there is the choice to ignore it, and you can actually dampen it and stop it from occurring again. Do you feel like you would have maybe kept having these other experiences, but if you had just stayed closed to them, they just would have been weird happenings? And
yeah, I don't know, because the things that happened to me were in of themselves like these openings into other realms, and I took them as part of my life experience. It wasn't like, oh, that's a one and done. It's never been like that for me. Today we'll talk about the big things that happen, but my entire life, there's been subtle things that happen all the time. So, and those are just as important because, it's all these little tiny stepping stones. I think when I was in my 20s, I used to consider myself an agnostic. I was raised in a non-religious household. There wasn't anything about God or angels or anything like that. My dad was a non-practicing Catholic. My mom was a non-practicing Lutheran. We never went to church. So I considered myself an agnostic. And then in my 20s, early 20s, I really looked up the definition of agnostic, that it was that like you're not sure about something, and I was like, why am I even labeling myself like that? I am sure about what I know as to be my truth. And so that was a big one for me also, like coming into my own, whereas it was finally taking ownership of, I don't need to be like everyone else. I think for most people who grow up with a lot of these experiences, you feel very alone. You feel very isolated. And so you kind of, like for me, I felt like, I kind of just became a chameleon and fit in with everybody else. And I think that's where it was just like, oh yeah, well, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what happens when we die. And it's like, I've been sure about what happens when we die since I was 5 years old. But I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, and that's a big conversation though, especially for, I think, people who grow up, in religious households who, believe that there is, an afterlife and this is what you have to do to get in there. That's a whole nother ball of wax. You know what I mean? 'Cause it's like, no, we're all going to the same place, folks. That's another episode.
Yeah,
so that's the thing. It's a huge spider web. These conversations are.
I think that plays a lot like the vocabulary question.
Yes, for sure.
There are places we all come from. Mm-hmm. There are words we've all heard used for things, and they begin to build these very grand expectations around them and definitions around them that may not even jive with someone else's definition of the same word that they've used their entire life too. I think you find that when you talk to people of different faiths and practices as well. You can both maybe talk about God, but it's almost like you really have to sit and ask each other, what is God?
Get some clarification.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Because otherwise, you're not even playing with the same set of rules. You're not even playing with the same deck of cards.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
that
It's
point.
important to be on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you never want anyone to assume anything about what you believe. I am so much bigger than that box. We are all so much bigger than these boxes. And I don't like labels. I really hate labels. I dislike being put into a box. I'm just Emily. It's just like, get to know me and you'll understand me.
Yeah.
Right? And I will be your friend. That's all that
Yeah.
matters.
And that's the baggage I think that comes with
Yeah.
all of it that makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
Because then, from the baggage you get to the clubs, and then you have to join the club, and if you're not in the club, you're an enemy or you're different. And then you just start pushing everybody else away from, recognizing people as the individuals that they are.
Yeah.
And that there's so much more to every person, because every person has this deep story that
Yeah.
they come from.
But we are all connected, and that's really important.
Yeah. This has been a progression that has had almost a regular pace to it
Yeah.
over time.
Right.
So you start near-death experience,
Yeah.
and coming off of that, is Emily a young little girl who is having regular experiences, or when does this rear its head again?
Yeah, little Emmy. To be perfectly honest, I know that my mom has told me about my fevers as a little kid, and I don't remember this. So it's just going off of what she's told me. She said that when I was little, so this is probably 5, 6, 7 years old, I would get these fevers that were sky high fevers, and she would feel like vibration coming off of me, and she said I felt like an electrical current, and so it was something that was tangible. So it wasn't just the thermometer reading, oh, she's hot, or my skin feeling hot. It was actual like vibrations coming off of me. And I don't know if that had anything to do with my near-death experience, that I was just starting to vibrate at a different frequency, or if it was just the way I got sick. I don't know. My mom, she was like a candy striper. So she's felt a lot of people with fevers, and had never felt that before. One particular story that she told me was that she came in to check on me, and I said to her, Grandma said I can't go. It's not my time yet. And she said, which grandma? And she started naming off all my living grandmas. And so she mentioned a grandma who had passed away before I was born. And I said, yes, that grandma. That's my grandma. She said, I can't go. It's not my time yet. And I think at that point, then my mom grabbed me, put me in the car, rushed me to the hospital. They put me on ice and everything like that. But that was one of the first experiences that my parents had told me about me talking with people on the other side, basically. And then the first memory that I remember of actually seeing someone from the other side was when I was about, I don't think I could have been older than about 10 years old. And I was spending the night at my grandma's house. And I got up in the middle of the night to go use the bathroom. And I noticed my grandma was sitting on the couch. And she had this really pretty yellow dress on. And she's just sitting there. And I didn't think a whole lot of it other than I wonder why my grandma is up in the middle of the night sitting on the couch.
Sure.
And so in the morning I asked her, I said, Grandma, I saw you last night sitting on the couch and you had this really pretty yellow dress on. And why were you sitting on the couch in the middle of the night? And she just smiled at me and just very calmly said, that wasn't me. That was probably my mom that you saw. And, at the time, I was so little, I just was like, oh, okay. That was my great grandma who had passed away before I had even met her. And I, thinking back now, because I never even talked to my grandma about it again, she was just so calm and just, smiling and just saying, no, it's probably my mom, and she explained that her mom had really loved the house that my grandma lived in and everything. And so that she would just be around. And then we jump forward 10 years. Okay, so then I enter the decade of my teenage years, and that's when things started opening up. I don't think I realized what was happening at the time, but one of the big things was that walking into a room and being able to feel the energy of the room. And I think that I didn't notice it because I think for a lot of things in my life, I've just always thought, well, that happens to everybody. So it was just normal. But I would find that when, teenagers have adventures, they go off in places that maybe they shouldn't be going and things like that. And I would have friends just ask me, how does this place feel to you? At the time, I was just like, ooh, that doesn't feel good, or like, I think we should leave, or, I think it's okay. It just looks scary. And so I think what it was just that I was tuning into lower vibrations and higher vibrations. It's like as an adult now, I don't see things as like good or bad or evil or, loving. It's more, to me, it's more the frequency of the vibration. It just is, because we exist in this ginormous existence that has all kinds of vibrations, and that's just what they are.
Well, no, I think you make an interesting point about how, once again, people put expectations or they load something up with their own meaning. And so, really what you're talking about is a simple process. There's something that you feel. It's as simple as being higher or lower or some level in between. But it's once we start assigning.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, exactly. There you go.
Sure.
Right there. Because, so let me tell you a story about Folic.
Okay.
Because this plays in perfectly.
This is a great story. Yeah.
Okay. So when I was 16, my friend and I were staying at my grandma's house. My friend was 17 at the time. So total teenagers, right? My grandma, this is the same grandma who I saw the mom of her ghost when I was young in her house. So same house. And my grandma had a Ouija board. I have no idea how long she had it or anything else. It wasn't something that I had noticed. It wasn't something I had seen her use or anything, but I was just kind of going through her game closet and I found it and I was like, hey, Grandma, can I use the Ouija board? She's like, of course, sure, go ahead. I'll show you how to use it. And so she showed us how to use it, and right away, the little thing that you put your fingers on started moving. And so we were just starting off saying, oh, hey, I got someone. Hi, are you a good spirit or a bad spirit? Yes or no? And, or whatever our little code was. And we started communicating with a being who said that his name was Folic. He said that he had died when he was young, so early 20s, I think. He was in this kind of this empty space. So he wasn't in, what people would call heaven. He wasn't in hell. He was just kind of lost. He was just there. And so we started asking all kinds of questions, and I'm going to make this story a lot shorter because it took place over 2 weeks, our whole experience with him. But basically we just started having conversations with him and learning about him, and he would ask questions of us, and and we would give answers because, first time using a Ouija board. This is a cautionary love story, by the way. I mean, really, I'm going to have some things to say about Ouija boards at the end of this. But we felt like we had this relationship with him, like he was our friend. Okay. And
And did he present himself?
Yes, as a friend. As a
Okay.
friend. He never asked us to do anything. He never, seemed to be trying to put thoughts into our heads or anything like that. It was like he was genuinely curious about us and about how we felt about things, And my friend had a boyfriend at the time, and he was asking a lot of questions about like love and like why she felt a certain way about him. And it was really an extraordinary experience. And so there was an incident. Remember, this happens over a couple weeks, sitting out on the front porch. And by this time, like the Ouija board went everywhere with us. Like it was like taking Frolic everywhere with us. So this one evening, we're sitting out on the steps of the front porch, and there was this feral cat that lived in the neighborhood. And I'm an animal person. Normally, animals come to me really quickly. This cat would never come near anyone. And so, being the 16-year-old that I was, I said, "Hey, Frolic, are you able to jump into the cat?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Can you show me how you would do that?" And he said, "Yes." And so we're watching the cat, and the cat all of a sudden kind of shakes its head and looks right at me, comes trotting over, gets into my lap, and begins purring. And I'm petting the cat, and I was just like, that was incredible. Like, I've never seen something happen like that. And so then I kind of came to my senses, and I said, okay, the cat may be terrified right now. Go ahead and, leave the cat. And all of a sudden, the cat kind of shook its head again. And it was almost like, when you're talking to someone and maybe you say something a little shocking to them and their eyes change a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's what happened to the cat. So it shook its head a little bit, its eyes changed, and then it was just like, oh my God, I'm out of here. And it ran away. Then we got to the point where we asked Frolic if we could actually see him. And he said, yes. And so we were like, okay, let's make this happen. And so he said, he gave us a time and said, I will be to the left of the fireplace. Just stare at the left side of the fireplace. And so that's what we did. We went into the room, we shut all the windows, we made it very quiet and everything so we could focus. And at that time, we went ahead and we looked to the left of the fireplace. And it was almost like someone had kind of tossed glitter into the air. And there wasn't really a form, like a humanoid form or anything, but it was as if like glitter dust, like the stuff Tinkerbell would sprinkle, fairy dust or something. And it was to the left of the fireplace. And then this like beautiful warm breeze came through the room, and it came from the wall where the fireplace was. There were no windows open or anything, but it came all the way through. It went through both of us, and it moved the curtains behind us. And my friend and I just looked at one another, and our jaws just dropped, and we both just had these huge grins on our face because the breeze felt good. It felt like loving and everything. There was nothing cold or scary or anything like that about it. So we ended up leaving Grandma's, coming back home. And, of course, Grandma wants to keep her Ouija board. So being the teenagers that we were, we went ahead and made our own Ouija board out of construction paper.
Oh, so you actually made one.
Yeah. Like I said, this is a cautionary love story. So yeah, we took some construction paper and we copied everything off the Ouija board before we left my grandma's. I don't even remember. I think we used like a duct tape type of thing for the thing that your fingers go on. It was something light enough, but big enough that we could see the letters in. So we get back to my house and we're talking to Follick. I think it was like the day after we had gotten back. And he said, I'm sad to say this, but I'm also happy to say this. It's time for me to say goodbye. And we were like, what are you talking about? Why would you have to say goodbye? And he said, because I'm going to get to go to heaven now. And we were like, what? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And he explained to us that the friendship that we had developed with him taught him about love, and that he was getting the chance now to ascend and to move on, and he wouldn't be talking with us anymore. And so we were sobbing. I've got goosebumps right now. We were sobbing, but we were so happy for him. And he said, I love you. Goodbye. And the board went silent. And so we're like crying and, comforting one another. And our fingers are still on the thing that moves. And all of a sudden, the thing that moves on the Ouija board started moving. And we were like, Follick? And it went to no. And I said, who's on the board? And very quickly, it started spelling out SATA. And both of us lifted our fingers off the thing. Do I think it was Satan? No, I do not think it was Satan. Do I think it was probably something being a little mischievous, maybe being a little pesky, maybe, going for a laugh, maybe doing whatever? Yeah. But we never touched it again. We actually called another friend and asked him to come and burn the board and destroy it. Burn the board, burn the construction paper.
Easily burned.
Destroy it. And I've never touched a Ouija board since. It was a great lesson. There were so many great lessons in it. One, learning that beings from what I would consider being lower frequency beings, so probably more like fourth dimensional beings that are able to communicate with us, are able to move on. They, from everything that I've learned since then, a lot of times they just aren't ready to move on into love and light and, fifth dimension and higher until maybe they've done something in their human life that they haven't forgiven themselves for yet. Or maybe they're scared. Maybe their transition was, for some reason, scary and they're not ready to move on. I don't know. But I'm really grateful that I had that experience, because it also taught me that be careful what you're playing with, especially when you don't know what you're doing. And if you can't see it and you don't have experience with something that you can't see, we got really lucky with Follick. It's I think we got the best case scenario, but that's not always the case. And like I said, I haven't touched a board in decades. And I don't think that I ever will. I don't feel the need for it.
Well, it's really talking about the idea of understanding not just people for the individuals that they are, but items for the tools that they are.
Yeah.
And it's not that necessarily the tool is good or bad, but that it's how you wield it. And like we talked about last week, it's all about intention.
Yeah.
If your intention is thoughtful, mindful, intelligent, well thought out, there's a good likelihood that the end result with the tool is going to be a positive one or a useful one, right? But if you don't know what you're doing, you haven't thought things through, if you're in a negative frame of mind, that tool can have unintended consequences that you don't even think about, because at that age, the experiences you've had with a Ouija board as a tool are a couple weeks old, And your first experience was positive, so why would there be anything?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think by then also I was more sensitive to feeling energies being higher vibration, lower vibration, even though I didn't have that vocabulary at the time. And I had never felt anything low vibe about the experience. I think if I had, I would have been like, yeah, let's not do that. Because I had had other experiences with friends where I was like, this is not good. This is not good. We're shutting this down. And this was nothing like that. And I think that this was, I don't know if it was meant to be what I took from it, but I took the lesson that, even when someone is in a really bad place, they can always turn it around and find good and find love and move forward, which is what he did. And I mean, that couldn't have, gotten a better outcome than what happened there.
Sure. But the next time, jump 10-ish years ahead, not a Ouija board, but tarot cards. And I particularly love this story.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Very personal reason.
This is a good one. Yeah. So then in my 20s, we jumped 10 years, which I just love. I still can't believe that I never saw that pattern of 10 years. A friend and I go and we have tarot cards read. The woman who read my cards said, "Oh, I see that you're going to be getting married in 6 months." And she tells me some other things. And I think I chuckled and kind of rolled my eyes and shook my head. So at the time, I was in a relationship that I had been in for quite a while. And I knew that it was not going to lead to marriage. In fact, it was already in the process of dissolving. And so hearing her say that I would be married in 6 months was it just wasn't going to happen. That just was not in the cards for me.
Which, of course, would cause a chuckle, a good chuckle. Right?
So on my wedding day, 6 months later, no joke, my friend who had the cards read with me was in my wedding party, and she came up to me and she said, "Do you remember what the tarot card woman said?" And I just, my jaw dropped and I was like, oh my God. Because what happened is after the tarot reading, went home and sure enough, the relationship that I was in dissolved. 6 weeks later, I met Will. 2 weeks after I met him, he asked me to marry him. And 6 months later, we were married. And it was to the shock of all of our friends and family.
Yeah.
This was very out of character for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
But now I just say, when you know, because when we met, it was like we'd been together forever. It felt so comfortable. And I had never felt that with any other person that I had ever been with. It was like we were meant to find one another. Like we had already known one another and we just reunited, and just like peas and carrots, it was just perfect. And so, and I'm sure we had friends and family who were placing bets on how long the marriage would last, but we're 24 years in now. So, I mean, we're pretty solid. So that was the decade. And during that time, I think, a lot of things quieted down for me, as far as, the spiritual aspect of it. I was really just living my life. I was, going to college and working and doing all those things that we get really busy doing in our 20s, and figuring out who I was and who we were as a married couple and everything like that. And so the 20s were a calm time, a happy time, calm time, busy time. When we were in our early 30s is when we were having our children. And I shut down a lot of things that had to do with spirituality, just due to an incident that we had with our firstborn. He was talking to beings early on, and I really felt that it was my dad, because he was happy. He was showing the person, the being, his cars at night, and giggling and laughing, and everything was really, really, really good. And then something felt off, and I had felt that at that time that my dad, who had passed away not long after our firstborn was a year old, I felt like my dad had finally fully transitioned into the spirit world. I know that he was hanging around a lot for a long time, because he and I were very close, and it was really difficult when I lost him. And so I felt like he went on to do what he needed to do. And yeah, so anyways, there was just one evening where our son was scared. It was the first time he'd ever been scared of something in his room. And so I just, being a new mom and everything, I just nipped everything in the bud, and I just did what I needed to do to clear the space, and everything was fine after that. But I made a decision, and I don't know if it was the right decision or not, but at that time it was the right decision for me and our family to just shut things down and focus on our family. And and I don't regret that. I don't know, about 7 years later, so 7-8 years later, I went to a place in Joshua Tree, California, called Integratron. If you've never heard about Integratron, just look it up. It's a really interesting place. And it was built by a man who said that he was visited by, I'm guessing you would say Venusians, people from Venus.
Yeah, I think that's the proper term.
And he built it to these specifications so that the sound is perfect. And it's an amazing place because you can be on one side of the room and someone else can be on the other side of the room, and you can whisper to them and they can hear you. So the acoustics are perfect in there. And a lot of musicians go and record there. It's really awesome. I went there for a sound bath, and there was lots and lots of people in this sound bath, and everybody's laying down and everything. And the sound bath starts very shortly after. I am floating above Integratron. I'm outside floating above Integratron, and I can feel the cold air, and I can feel the wind, and I'm just floating there. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing? And I start hearing this collective of voices saying, we are all connected. We are all connected. I was taken on a journey, and I don't know who it was. I would like to think it was a collective of Venusians or Venusians. I don't know. But they took me in the desert, and they took me over a woman's house where she was hanging laundry outside. And they just kept repeating, we are all connected. We are all connected. And then they took me to a city. I have no idea what city it was. And it was a busy street and intersection. And we went through, it was almost like we were flying through very quickly, and the wind was like whipping everyone's hair, and almost like they could feel this wind go by, but they didn't know what it was. And the trees would even blow as well. And same thing, we are all connected. We are all connected. It ended with me being taken all the way out into, past our atmosphere, out into space, so that I could see our entire planet. And same thing, we are all connected. We are all connected. And it was so beautiful, and it was so peaceful, and it was just kindly hammering it into me that we are all from the same source. We are all connected. We are all brothers and sisters, and we're here having this experience together, even though every experience is different. I went back into my body. My eyes were still closed because the sound bath was still happening. And I could see people walking back and forth, with, how when your eyes are shut and you can see the shadows of people walking in front of you. I could see people walking to the left and to the right, and I could hear their footsteps. Then after the sound bath was over, I asked my friend, how her experience was. And she's like, you know what? Nothing was really happening. So I just decided to sit up and watch all of you, because there was like 6 of us women who went. And I said, who were there, like people walking around? And she said, no one was walking around. And she said, I was watching everyone was just laying down, but no one was walking around. And I thought that was really interesting, because I was like, well, what was I seeing? Who, was I kind of in between realms? I have no idea. So I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, Integratron was huge for me because of the understanding, from my near-death experience, understanding that I was part of everything and everything was part of me. And there was no separation in that. I was part of Source. But Integratron was kind of like speaking to my adult self, saying, we are all part of Source, like everything. And not just the beings that are on our planet right now, but everything in nature, everything that is, microorganisms, everything. And that's huge when you start thinking about everything we can see, everything we can't see. We are all interwoven in this web, and it's really hard to put into words. So much of what I've experienced, I can't put into words in an intelligent way, because so much of it is through feeling. And the feeling I get, it makes sense to me. But then when I try to explain things, it's really hard to make it clear and as impactful as it was, because we're limited. Yeah.
It's a lot like what we were talking about last week with the great wave of emotion that comes
yes,
with
bliss.
The experiences.
Yes.
And when we're talking about the bliss, which is what we call it.
Yeah.
That it's almost like we are unable to process the full amount of the information.
Yeah.
And so it comes out like we're having 8 emotions at the same time, even though in the cases where I've experienced it, it's been positive every time.
Yeah.
There is a limitation about, the things we experience, and then trying to put them into words, because obviously that's what you want to do. You want to be able to explain it to someone else.
For sure. Without sounding like, oh, what's she been taking? You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's the thing, trying to convey it in a way that is intelligent. I like to try and pull in a little science in there too, just to try to make sense, when I'm just talking to someone and it's like, but that's just not the way this is, at least most of the time. I think when I talk about energy, that makes sense to people, and vibrations and things. But when you're talking about, other beings from other planets taking you on a journey, I can't back that up with anything, and I really am I've come to the point where I don't need to, and that's okay. We progress in science every year, every day. More and more studies are being done just in energy alone.
Well, I remember it sort of reigniting this topic of discussion in the house, where it just hadn't been for a while. Mm-hmm. And I was indifferent to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But, in a sense where it's like, I'll listen to what you have to say. I'll take it all in. I didn't know whether to believe it or not.
Yeah, you never looked at me like, yeah, okay, you are nuts. You never did that.
Well, it never felt fair to do something like that.
Right.
Because, we all have different experiences. And, if you're in a situation where you're being honest about something, especially something like this where you come out of it and you have this thing happen to you, and you're trying to explain it, you're not doing the best you can. It's likely possible that you can't fully explain it because it's likely possible that you didn't fully experience it all the way. Like maybe it was meant to be experienced and you're not able to feel it in its entirety.
Yeah.
Because either the antenna is too small or the receiver is not calibrated well enough, or you're just not functional enough as a person to have that experience. It's, like we talked about last week, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so I just remember it being like, we had the discussion, when you shut things down.
Yeah.
You told me like, this is just something I'm like, this isn't happening anymore. We're not letting this. And then all of a sudden, like the Integratron visit just opened it.
Yeah, it was,
back
it
up.
was really, it was wonderful. And it felt really good. It was like, okay, like I was happy that it happened. I was grateful that it happened. So yeah, it started opening things back up, and then we jump into the next decade, and the little subtleties began opening again, just my awareness of things. And so I would say the big thing that happened to me in my 40s was the skeleton dogs. That's what I call them, skeleton dogs. Mm-hmm. Presented themselves to me. They literally look like a 40-pound dog in skeletal form. They don't have tails. And that may sound scary to some people. They are not scary. I have never been scared of them. I absolutely adore them. They don't interact with me like a human dog would. They are just around me. And there can be as many as three at a time. The first time that I saw them, I was just on our porch and I was looking up at our lilac bush and just thinking, it's one of my favorite plants in our yard, and just how lovely it was and everything. And one of the skeleton dogs walked out from under the porch, and it surprised me because I wasn't expecting anything like that. And I kind of jumped back and I was like, whoo, like what was that? But it was clear as day. I mean, it was like it was in our realm. I believe that they are some sort of interdimensional being because I do not see them constantly. I see them at all different kinds of times. A lot of times it's when I'm just sitting out in the yard or sitting on the walkway, and they'll just pass by me. And they've been in our house. I remember one night, I don't know if you remember or not, where I was just like, oh my God. And one walked in front of me, and then another one, and Will was right there. And I was like, did you see that? Are you seeing them? He's like, no, I'm not seeing them. like they're clear as day. They're solid. They're just there. And I learned how to start reading tarot cards like a year later or something like that. And my tarot deck is animals. It's all animals. And I started asking my guides, what are the skeleton dogs? And I got that they are loyal and that they are guardians. And that made me feel really good because I have nothing but love for them. For those of you out there this is new for you, I went to the eye doctor. I got my eyes checked. The doctor said my optic nerves were really healthy and I wasn't seeing things. So that's my point. I wasn't seeing things. And so, yeah, I've been seeing them for a number of years now and am comforted by them. They're not just at home. I mean, I go to other places and they go with me. They're one of my mysteries that I really would love to know more about is, have they always been with me? Why? Why do I have them with me? Do we all have some sort of little guardians? I mean, I'm not talking a guardian angel. These are skeleton dogs. So anyways, they're awesome. So that was one of the big things in my 40s.
Yeah, it feels like there's somewhere a piece of lore.
Right?
That hopefully explains what they are. They've been seen before. Someone has documented them.
I've done so much research and I have not been able to find anything.
And we've even talked a lot about whether they even recognize that we're here. And that's what makes them so fascinating, is that it's not just something that showed up one time.
No.
They have continued to be a constant.
Yeah. I don't always see them, but but I've seen them in enough other places and they're always with me. I mean, they're never further. I mean, they're always within like a couple feet of me. I've seen them walk away so that, one could have been like 8 feet away from me, but they're generally always with me. Love my skeleton dogs. Wish I could show them to everyone one day.
Well, that's quite a journey. I mean, it's definitely way different than what I've been going through for the last few months in how all of this seems to be more normalized for you.
Oh, yeah.
But it still surprises you. Whereas everything still seems very much a surprise to me. It's such a great framework to have. I'm very lucky to have had a resource like you to bounce things off of. And that's, I think, what makes this whole experience so rich. And I look forward to seeing what the next 10-year gap brings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what major experiences we'll have then.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's like, when you're open to the experiences and you don't see them as scary or bad or anything, and you can just roll with it, it's exciting. And I feel like all my time from childhood on, all the lessons, all the things, now I'm going to be able to put into practice because things are still changing for me and things are still surprising. I feel like now I'm stepping onto a path where I'm going to be able to do something, and I'm really excited about that.
You've been listening to the Endless Song Podcast with Will and Emily. Today's music, Everything Feels New, and Alternative Ways by Evgeny Bardyuzha. Stay safe out there, everyone. And remember, intentions matter. So be thoughtful, be kind, and be better every day. And we'll see you out there on the trails. Is there anything about your near-death experience that you feel like you need to add to or talk to or clarify?
No, but I'm about to, I don't know if you all can hear that rooster. That rooster's about to have a near-death experience if it keeps cock-a-doodle-doing outside our window.
Yeah, he always picks the right times to be out there.